Bible Doctrine, Lecture 25, Part 2. And you can move that table if you want, guys. Maybe move it a little forward to get some room. On page 2, just finished henotheism. Now an easier term, at least to say and know about, atheism. Atheism. Okay, I would move that table if I were you. I'm starting to have some panic attacks going on. So atheism, look on your page there. Within the confines of atheism are the following types of conclusions that can be reached. Look at these conclusions. It's kind of interesting on this term atheism. God does not exist. That's what they call strong atheism.
Like they know.
God almost certainly does not exist. De facto atheism. You're not to that point just to say God does not exist. Next one. No one knows whether God exists. Well, that's agnosticism. I guess a subunit of atheism. God exists, but this cannot be proven or disproven. So you're a weak atheist if you believe that way, but you're actually a smart one. And God exists, and this can be proven. Well, that's not atheism. Strong theism. There are numerous variations on these positions. Atheism, in a broad sense, is a rejection of belief in the existence of deities. So think about this. Is atheism not belief? Is it a belief system in itself, I should say?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so they're basically believing that there is, it's weird, there's no belief in existence. People do believe in the existence of deities, so it's a belief that there aren't any deities. I should rephrase that, but this is from Wikipedia. In a narrower sense, atheism is specifically the position that there are no deities. What don't you understand? Most inclusively, atheism is simply the absence of belief that any deities exist. All right. Simply put, 100th time, atheism is the belief that there is no God. So it's a belief. A belief system. In that there is no God. So they do believe something about God. About 2% of the world's population says it's atheistic, while further about 12% describe themselves as non-religious. What do you think the difference between non-religious and atheistic is?
Non-religious could believe in a God, but just choose not to worship Him.
Okay. That along with what you were going to say, or
atheism to me is somebody who's thought about it and just rejected the notion that there is a God, whereas those that are non-religious are just kind of lazy and
yeah,
maybe
almost like an agnostic, but they're not.
Yeah.
They're just labeling themselves, haven't really thought about it much. Maybe don't even care. I'm just not a religious person.
Right. Just no thought versus
Yeah.
somebody who's really thought about it and just rejected the notion.
Both seem right to me, what you said. Okay. Theoretical atheism explicitly makes arguments against the existence of gods, responding to common theistic arguments, such as the arguments from design. So these are folks that argue about their belief and people that believe in God. They're theoretical atheists. So they get into the debate system. One of the most common criticisms of atheism is that denying the existence of a God leads to moral relativism, leaving one with no moral or ethical foundation. And also it can render life meaningless and miserable.
Yes.
Blaise Pascal argued this view in his, whatever that was, Lindsay's. So an atheist, you can talk to him and say, listen, there's a danger there. What's the danger? One at least?
Depression.
Yeah, okay. What did we discover? What's one danger with believing in atheism?
No absolute truth, no moral foundation.
Yeah, no absolute truth, moral relativism. It can just change at the whim of a government. And also, life, well, is meaningless. What's the point except just get all the Taco Bell stuff you can get in a sitting here? Good thing we have limits on how many tacos. Okay, non-theism holds that the universe can be explained without any reference to the supernatural or to a supernatural being. So some non-theists avoid the concept of God, whilst accepting that it is significant to many. Other non-theists understand God as a symbol of human values and aspirations. They don't really get into all this arguing that God doesn't exist. They understand there's a symbolicness of it, and they're okay with that. Many schools of Buddhism may be considered non-theistic. So I guess they don't go to the point that says there's no God. But they say they can explain the universe without God, which is interesting. Oh, here's a new one. Dystheism is a form of theism which holds that God is either not wholly good or is fully malevolent as a consequence of the problem of evil. And here's a classic one. The classic one is Satanism. They practice, young ladies, they practice dystheism, as they call it. They say God is basically evil. You know, it would be like some of these old sci-fi or even newer sci-fi movies and stuff. I don't watch them, but their gods, some of their gods are evil. Or God, and this the concept of what he's doing out there. We're really fighting against the gods, we humans. They're trying to kill us all or force us into hard labor camps. Do you think anyone could have a view of God as being mean and evil?
Yeah.
Unloving? Yeah, when they start thinking about all the sin in the world. Innocent people getting hurt. Or coming up with a concept or believing the concept of hell. What kind of God would send people to this place? He must be evil. Well, he's not. He's very loving. Someone help me out on this in just a moment. Get ready. So chew up the food, and you got to say that because otherwise, in this time period, no one would be having a mouth free from food for this whole 30 minutes. See, no one talked right now, so that proves it. Agnosticism is a stance about the similarities or differences between belief and knowledge, rather than about any specific claim or belief. So they are basically ignorant about God. Without nost, knowledge. Without knowledge about God. I group them as either obnoxious agnostics. I heard a famous apologist, Robert Murray. A long time ago, he classified them as either obnoxious agnostics, who are very outspoken about God, but are in essence blatantly ignorant of Him. There's a lot of people like that. Or passive agnostics, those who are obviously ignorant about Him, but don't say hardly anything in regards to God. They just kind of keep a low profile. The ones that really, well, one of them that bugged me is the obnoxious agnostics, spouting off all their ignorance. So someone read about agnostic atheists. Well, what kind of a bird is that?
Agnostic atheists are atheistic because they do not have belief in the existence of any deity, and agnostic because they do not claim to know that a deity does not exist.
Basically, another term for them is imbecile. Well, that's funny to me. All right. Going on. Agnostic theism, or theist.
The view of those who do not claim to know the existence of any deity, but still believe in such an existence.
I like that one. I don't know about any God or anything, but I believe in one. Well, he's better than the agnostic atheist. There's the apathetic agnosticism. Someone read that line.
The view that there is no proof of either the existence or non-existence of any deity, but since any deity that may exist appears unconcerned for the universe or the welfare of its inhabitants, the question is largely academic.
Yeah. It doesn't seem like God's involved in all this, so probably not a God, but I don't know. But it's really a moot point. Robert Ingersoll, you might have heard of him. Many years ago he lived, an Illinois lawyer and politician, who evolved into a well-known and sought-after orator in the 19th century America, has been referred to as the Great Agnostic. He states, listen to what he says here. Is there a God? I do not know. Now this guy's smart though. Watch this. Is man immortal? I do not know. One thing I do know, And that is that neither hope, nor fear, belief, nor denial can change the fact. It is as it is, and it will be as it must be.
Okay.
I think he's saying he doesn't know. But he's not really pursuing it. But it is what it is. I mean, if there is a God, there is a God. If there isn't, there isn't. I'm not pursuing it. There's a lot of people like that. They don't say it that way. They don't know if there's a God. There might be, but I'm just not interested in figuring it out. Agnosticism, we covered that a week or two ago. The view that a coherent definition of a deity must be put forward before the question of the existence of a deity can be meaningfully discussed. This is good.
Yeah.
These people actually are thinkers. Because if someone comes up to them, do you believe in God? Well, define what you mean by God, and I'll tell you.
Right.
An agnostic cannot even say whether she is a theist or a non-theist until a sufficient definition of theism is put forth. Good. God must be defined before any attempt to qualify belief in Him. Okay, so that might be on a test. That's a one I haven't heard of before, but is important to know. Oh boy, here's one. Hierology. Oh boy. Brother Vinci, you ready to learn about this? Refers to the study of the sacred and sacredness. There's so many people like this in this view. It is generally pursued by those who find real truth in many faiths, and especially refers to philosophical speculations about religion that involve the traditions of multiple cultures or belief systems. It's kind of like religious anthropology. It differs from theology in that a god or gods are not necessarily a focus. It is a fascination with religion or the sacred. People that like to study about religious customs, and anthropology deals with that. One big segment.
Yeah.
All the religious customs. I mean, they don't really believe in their gods, but they're studying, well, hierology is what it's called. All right. There are weird ones in here. Here's one of the weirder ones, but I can understand where they're coming from. Let's see if you can too, on neurotheology. What? I said neurotheology, also known as spiritual neuroscience. It's a study of correlations of neural meaning nerves in your body, neural phenomena with subjective experiences of spirituality and hypotheses to explain these phenomena. Stop. What am I saying? These are people that do not believe in God, like scientists, most of them, psychiatrists, who all these people have all these religious experiences, so they try and find out what's going on in their brain physiologically that's causing this so-called religious phenomena. Like someone who says, whatever, God is speaking to me right now. Or in prayer, what goes on with prayer? Because people can get healed through prayer, so there must be some neurological explanation. So there's a lot involved in this study right now in America and other places. Proponents of neurotheology claim that there is a neurological and evolutionary basis for subjective experiences traditionally categorized as spiritual or religious. Listen, suggestions have been made that an increase of N-dimethyltryptamine levels in the pineal gland or stimulation of the temporal lobe by psychoactive ingredients of magic mushrooms, of course, one of those two, mimics, this is how they said it here, mimics religious experiences. I like the last part. It's either this one or it's magic mushrooms. I just don't know why they said that, but yeah. So maybe psychoactive drugs can cause it. There's a lot of people that have these wild religious experiences do drugs also. It surmises that spirituality can be explained physiologically. That's what I put in. Hopefully that covers it all for you. So if you can remember neurotheology. There's people that, my psychiatrist, former, not the one I went to personally, but the one I worked for, said that. Something like that. They can be explained. The demonic, especially the guys that were schizophrenic that I believe were possessed by devils, and all these voices, they try to show through MRI scans that this part of the brain is hyperactive and causing these so-called voices they hear. Did you, yeah?
I was just going to say it's great as Christians, Bible-believing Christians, we don't rely on experience, so
Yeah.
we don't even fit into that.
No.
'Cause we
No,
don't-
but you can understand someone who just pushes the Bible aside, and they got all these
Yeah.
people with these experiences, especially if they're scientists or psychiatrists trying to explain it.
Yeah.
Well, we'll jump from that one, if your minds are still with me. Deism. Someone read some of that, at least?
Born out of the 18th century Enlightenment or Age of Reason, deism believes that God exists, but not as a personal God. It holds that God is present in his creation, but only via his power, not in his being and nature. For example, only the power is there. There is no person to know. Deism denies the need for or the possibility of special revelation, holding that man's reasoning, thinking power is sufficient to know there is a higher being. Deism believes that God is separate from his creation, example, not involved.
Yeah, so you might have heard this before, deism. There's deists out there, and back centuries ago, deism was a fad, I guess. So God is real, but he's not personable. You can't know him. He started this universe off and is taking his hands off and doing something else now. Just think if that was God. That was the God. A different life would be. I'm not saying it could have been that way, but we don't know what could have. I mean, when you think about God, he could have said that. He said, I started this, and this is the way I'm going to do it. Couldn't he have?
Yeah.
But our understanding of God, we know who God is, but
It goes against the nature.
but he is the way he is, so we don't need this kind of trying to think of all these different ways he could have done things. Dualism. This concept holds that there are two distinct and irreducible principles. Good, which is called God, and evil, called the devil or Satan. Not only teaches that both God and Satan are co-eternal, but also that God is finite. Well, it is a yin-yang philosophy. Persian Zoroastrianism is a form of dualism, as was the ancient Eastern religion of Manichaeanism. The Gnostic sects of early Christendom were also dualistic. So this gets down to good is God, bad and evil, wicked and all that is devil and Satan. I didn't know they actually believed that they were eternal beings. But I thought they more dealt with concepts or forces or something ethereal, not finite. So that's how they define it, dualism. Mystical theology. There's a lot of that going around. Comprises among its subjects all extraordinary forms of prayer, the higher forms of contemplation in all their varieties or gradations, private revelations, visions, and the union growing out of these between God and the soul, known as the mystical union. It is the science of all that is extraordinary, I'll add in paranormal, in the relations between the divinity and the human spirit. Its origins are the Catholic religion. So, like charismatics have a lot of weird stuff, New Ageism kind of branching out of that. You can take it back to Catholicism, most of that. And from that, paganism. And basically Satanism. I'm not saying charismatics are Satanism. Don't make that connection. No, I'm not saying that. For our charismatic friends, you'd be glad to know I don't believe that. Yeah. Arianism. Scary. One of our men read this one. Slowly, if you can.
The Arian concept of Christ is that the Son of God did not always exist, but was created by, and is therefore distinct from and inferior to God the Father. The Christian movement reputed the practice a form of Arianism, or semi-Arianism, or Jehovah's Witnesses. They consider Jesus Christ to be divine and unlike other created beings, but not equal to one God. However, they disagree with Arius' views in many respects. For example, deny that the Son could really know the Father, while Jehovah's Witnesses believe that the Son fully knows the Father. Arianism teaches that Jesus is inferior to the Father.
Well, it's a lie. Though, Jesus as a son in that relationship, positionally like that, I don't like to use the term inferior, but he is subjected to him. But he is fully God. He's fully God, but we understand his position in the Godhead. He does whatever his Father's will is. He's a son. There's a Father. You can understand that. So they took that and spread it out too far. Arianism. And the classic Arianism we see today is the skinhead movement that says basically it's a revived Nazism that I guess it's white, blue-eyed people are superior and everyone else is inferior and not even human. Naturalism. This view states that everything is governed by the laws of nature and that man's happiness depends on his cooperating with these laws. Everything that happens is controlled by these laws of nature. It's not nice to fool with Mother Nature. And it is a butter commercial of all weird things, right?
Yeah, that's margarine.
Well, okay, yeah, that's true, margarine. Synthetically grown in a laboratory. We covered this last week. Fatalism. This view states that everything is determined by fate. Fatalists may call fate, well, God, as does Islam, but such a God is arbitrary, non-moral, and impersonal. I wrote, fate often is linked to what's called destiny. It is a concept based on the belief that there is a fixed natural order to the cosmos. They don't believe in a actual being, God. There's this kind of concept of God. So there's also what they call luck. Not they, but people call luck. A superstitious chance happening. But there's something behind it. Lucky sevens! Oh, it's April 3rd. That's my lucky day. Don't use the term luck as a Christian.
Right.
Divorce it from your vocabulary.
Yep.
I'll be listening. And also take away... well, you can think about chance, along with luck, fortunate. Where I say,
right.
We were so
Yeah.
fortunate.
Yeah.
Fortunate.
Blessed.
No. Oh, okay. I was thinking fortunate is more like a luck-based.
No,
You
we're
say
saying,
lust?
We were saying instead of fortunate, blessed.
Same one.
Oh, blessed. I thought you said lust. I was like, I wouldn't have said, okay, blessed. Sorry. yeah, lust. What's going on? No.
What are you
That's what I heard. Too much iced tea. That's the issue. Well, moving quickly along. So a superstitious chance happening, a more mystical version of fate. Fatalism teaches that free will does not exist, meaning therefore that history has progressed in the only manner possible, and that man has no power to influence the future, or his own actions even. This belief is very similar to predeterminism. Predeterminism. Okay. What's predeterminism? It's the same as fate. Go ahead and off in the corner, and you can do your sign language attacks her. What do you need to tell her?
The fridge was open.
Oh,
And you kept hearing the humming.
thank you. Thank you, Leah. That's fine. I just thought there was some emergency going on. I guess it was.
There was, and we handled it
I know.
discreetly until you called attention to it.
No, you know me. I pick things up, and then it starts. The whole universe is not in line with Jupiter and Mars anymore. Okay, liberation theology.
Maybe we can strike that from your vocabulary.
Thank you.
I apologize.
No, that's fine. That's very legitimate. It's just, I have problems with that, as you can tell. Liberation theology is a Christian movement in political theology which interprets the teaching of Jesus Christ in terms of a liberation from unjust economic, political, or social conditions. You've heard this term probably before in this last election. The term was coined in 1971 by the Peruvian priest, of course, Gustavo Gutierrez, who wrote one of the movement's most famous books, A Theology of Liberation. A subgroup of this is Black Liberation Theology, sometimes shortened to Black Theology. It is a relatively new theological perspective found in some Christian churches in the United States. It maintains that African Americans must be liberated from multiple forms of bondage, political, social, economic, and religious. This formulation views Christian theology as a theology of liberation James Cone first addressed this theology after Malcolm X's proclamation in the 50s against Christianity being taught as a white man's religion. So this guy comes up with, well, let's have a black man's religion. Trinity United Church of Christ in Chicago is the church most frequently cited by press accounts as the best example of a church formally founded on the vision of black liberation theology. This is from Wikipedia. The 2008 Jeremiah Wright controversy over differing interpretations of some of his sermons and statements caused the then Senator Barack Hussein Obama to distance himself from his former pastor of 20 years, who he listened to, I guess, once a week, spouting things like that. If he was faithful. Maybe he wasn't that faithful to it, but how he got out of that one. I thought he was doomed with that controversy. He wasn't doomed, was he, Brother Vinci? No, he's the Antichrist. You can hear that in the background. That would be Brother Dean. All you Democrat-leaning or left of center folks. Now, theology, but spelled differently. I don't know how you pronounce it. It's a neologism. Neologism. Yeah. What's a neologism?
A new logic?
It's a new coined word.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Coined by Isaac
logo.
Bonewitz.
Logo.
It is, so this thing is a discourse that reflects upon the meaning of goddess and a relationship to life forms. It is a discourse that critically engages the past and contemporary goddess communities' beliefs, so goddess worship. All blah, 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 blah. The term suggests a feminist approach, yeah, it sure does, to theism, and the context of God and gender within the context of neo-paganism. Theology, I think I'm going to call it that way, increasingly appeared in feminist literature associated with the neo-pagan goddess movement during the 80s and 90s. So I've heard about that. I've even seen it on the back of cars, like goddess worship, or I'm a goddess.
Oh,
I
man.
drove by the lady and went, "Sure, no goddess, that's for sure."
Yeah. Oh, man.
You like that?
Yeah, I like that.
Moving right along with this one, feminist theology. Oh, one of our ladies read about half of this.
Feminist theology is a movement found in several religions, including Buddhism, Christianity, Judaism, and New Thought. It is given to reconsidering the traditions, practices, scriptures, and theologies of those religions from a feminist perspective. Feminist theologians have supported the use of non- or multi-gendered language for God, arguing that language powerfully impacts belief about the behavior and essence of God. A Christian feminist believes that God does not discriminate on the basis of biologically determined characteristics such as sex and race. Their major issues include the ordination of women, male dominance in Christian marriage, recognition of equal spiritual and moral abilities, reproductive rights, and the search for a feminine or gender transcendent divine.
Yeah, the search for
Female God.
the female God, or at least gender-neutral God. Now, I understand partly, I guess, why ladies get offended, because you read the Bible, it's definitely male-dominated. There's no way around that. And if you're kind of one of those ladies that leans the other way, this can rub you the wrong way. Remember, there's a lot of terms in the Bible that sound like it's all male, but it's a neutral term.
Right.
Like when it says sons of God or mankind, many times man in a plural sense, it's including the other species known as man. And lastly, and maybe the weirdest of all, no, we'll just say it. It's the weirdest of all, brother. You ready? Exotheology. E.T. Is a term that was coined in the 60s and 70s for the examination of theological issues as they pertain to extraterrestrial intelligence. So religion and that put together. It is primarily concerned with either conjecture about possible theological beliefs that extraterrestrials might have, or how our own theologies have been or will be influenced by evidence and our interaction with extraterrestrials. Which I could, if all of a sudden there was an extraterrestrial, that could influence religion a little bit, don't you think?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm not too concerned with what extraterrestrials believe in. But just the existence of one would say, okay, if they all of a sudden found this little weird being, talking strange, I would say, okay, let's look at the Bible and figure this thing out. E.T. is real. A Christian writer early to address the let's back up, question was C.S. Lewis, who in a 50s article in the Christian Herald contemplated the possibility of the Son of God incarnating in other extraterrestrial worlds, or that God could devise an entirely distinct plan of salvation for extraterrestrial communities from the one applicable to humans. And, this is blasphemy. It sounds nice to some people, but it involves Jesus Christ, I guess, dying again, or having some other plan of salvation for people on Mars. Exotheology. Ridiculous. Well, you'll have a study guide for these, but the underlying parts you can get to know better. All right, go to sleep now.